the call, and I want to thank you so much for being a part of this webinar. It's pretty exciting to be able to present this particular information because this is a brand new presentation that I did for the session, and there's a lot of really new content in here because the internet is just changing. It's changing all the time. And I know it's very confusing because at the beginning of the session we talked about this being fans, friends, and followers, and now the slide says selling more books. And really, it's kind of all the same thing because what we really want to do is we want to make sure that this matters. We have better things to do with our lives than to spend our days on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and now Pinterest and not know if any of this stuff is really paying off. So the first piece of this is any of this helpful? I get this question all the time. I mean, we all want to participate. It's not that we don't want to participate, but we want to know, as I pointed out just a few minutes ago, is any of this making sense? And the truth is it's no longer about being everywhere. A couple of years ago, it was really about being absolutely everywhere. If you were on, whatever site that was, MySpace was big several years ago, a long time ago now. But, it was just being about everywhere and saturating everything. But we just don't have that kind of time anymore. So it's not so much about being everywhere. It's about being everywhere that matters. And that's what this webinar is really about and is really focused on. Because we want to know that the things that we are doing matter. And how do we define whether or not they matter? By figuring out, first and foremost, who our audience is and asking ourselves better questions. So the wrong question is, will any of this help me sell books? The right question is, which marketing actions will get me the most exposure? Because the truth is repetitive exposure equals book sales. And one of the things that we have found, we do marketing for authors, and I have endless calls and coaching calls and wrap-up calls and consultation calls and sessions and things where people come up to me and they say, okay, what really matters? I'm on Twitter, I'm on this, and I say, you know what? You've got to do these things, the things that are working. And the numbers never lie, and we'll talk in a minute about the numbers. But the things that are working, you have to do a lot of them. And in this session today, we're going to look at Twitter, we're going to look at Facebook, we're going to look at Pinterest, which is my new addiction, and I think a lot of people share that. And we're also going to look at website and website strategies. And we're going to talk a little bit about, how do you figure out what you need to be doing? Because that, my friends, is oftentimes the million-dollar question. So 7 touches. So people need 7 exposures to your book, message, or product for them to decide whether or not they want to buy it. Very few people will actually buy a product, a service, or a book from the first time. You have to really be compelled. There has to be a very compelling reason, a very compelling message. But more often than not, they have to be exposed to something. Now, here's an example. Most of you probably know Tony Robbins, okay? Most people, and the reason I mention this is because I was reading Publishers Weekly. He has an audio series out now that is skyrocketing up the audio bestseller list. And, I thought, well, that's kind of a really good example because people who like Tony's material, you say, well, but a lot of people will go out and just buy this audio or buy his next book. Well, and that's very true. And granted, Tony is a brand, and I understand that, but he also has built in those 7 touches. So maybe you're on his mailing list. Maybe you've liked his Facebook page. Maybe you have gone to some of his events. Whatever that is, those 7 touches are built into his brand. And I will tell you something. Regardless of how big a brand is when it launches or how much potential that you see, if those 7 touches are not built in to their model, I can almost guarantee you that it won't last. It'll be one of those things where you say, gosh, do you remember about such and such, and it was such a big deal, and it was such a this, and it was such a that. Now, of course, the idea has to be good, because if you have a really lousy idea, or if you have a really lousy book, or if you have something that just doesn't have any stickiness to it, it's not going to last. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that all those things are in place. You still need to have the basics. People need to be able to access your message multiple times in order for them to buy it. And the trick to this now is, we all hate to be sold. So where you'd say, well, that's easy. I'm just going to run 7 ads in 7 different publications. Not so much. You have to really get creative and, market online. And I want to discourage this conversation today from going to the, let's just run 7 different ads online, because ads online don't have that much of a pull either. So just keep in mind that that's not where we're focused on today. So 4 in 5 active Internet users visit social networks and blogs. Okay, so this is something to consider. A lot of people say, well, I don't know, I never go to blogs. Well, if you have ever been to my website, you know that we have a blog on our site, but you may just come to our site just to get whatever information or anything like that. Our website is actually a blog. So it's a WordPress site, and it's customized, and it is actually a blog. So a lot of sites are now disguised as WordPress blogs, and they are actually blogs. So if you say you're not visiting blogs, you actually are. They just don't look like them, and they don't look like the way that they used to. 70% of active online adult social networkers shop online. This is a really, really, really important statistic. This is part of the reason why Internet social networking is so important and should be part of everybody's campaign. And they also spend more, right? So socially engaged customers spend 20 to 40% more than other customers, which is a pretty big number. 20 to 40% more is a pretty significant and very, very easy, essentially, upsell. But first you have to create a plan. You have to know where you're going. You would never drive from, San Diego or Arizona to New York without a GPS system, a map, or a plan or something, or directions written on a piece of paper. So you want to navigate your book marketing as effectively and as cost-effectively and as efficiently as possible. So the first question you want to ask yourself is, what does your ecosystem look like? Okay, so where does your audience step into your message? Where are they finding you? Where are they entering? What's their point of entry? And here's a really good way to figure out where your audience is kind of how they're kind of finding you. I want you to identify the top 5 to 10 authors in your market. And if you can only have time to find 5, that's fine. And I want you to start searching for them. Now, when I say top 5 to 10, I want you to try to stay away from brands, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. So I want you to go on Google and search your keywords, and then it'll pull up, probably page 1 may have a lot of those brands, and you want to kind of bypass them. So you may end up going down to page 2 on Google to find the folks that you're looking for. But the reason that I want you to do this is because I want you to get to know these people. And I want you to start following them. I want you to follow them on Twitter. I want you to like their Facebook pages. If they're on LinkedIn, I want you to, find them on LinkedIn. I want you to follow their blog. And I want you to figure out, so I want you to play a little bit private detective. I want you to identify what they are doing. And I want you to start to make a plan based on what you see works in your market. Now, this is all part of the research that you're going to do. This is not about you going out and copying what everybody else is doing at all, because I would never encourage that. You should learn from people who have, learn from people who have already done what you're setting out to do, and then I want you to modify it and tweak it and brand it and make it your own. But in order to in order to get out there, you really have to know where are you getting out to. Now, you may not be in a market that is really necessarily a Twitter market. So, and that's fine. I would highly doubt that, really, because Twitter tends to be pretty awesome for most things. But a better example might be LinkedIn versus Facebook. You may have much more of a LinkedIn you may have much more of a LinkedIn group. So figuring out who those people are, blogs, websites, all of that's important to your market. You really want to know who they are. And the reason for this is because this will save you loads of time in a couple of ways. First off, you won't have to sort of, sift through all the data on Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and all the other social networking sites that are out there in order to figure out where your audience is. You can kind of identify it from the folks that you're following. The other thing is I want you to get Google Alerts. And if you're not familiar with Google Alerts, go to google.com and just type in Google Alerts, and it'll take you right there. It's a free service that Google offers. And it will alert you every single time a keyword is mentioned that you plug into the search box. So let's just say that you have plugged in the author's name that you're following, their book title, okay, the book or whatever recent book that they are promoting, and maybe you plug in your keywords. So let's say that your topic is, I just had a conversation with a woman who wrote a book about infertility. So let's say your topic is on infertility. Okay, so you want to follow all the keywords about infertility. You also should always get your own website address, so your domain name, your name, and if you have a very common name, you may want to put that in quotes, and even then it's probably not really going to help you too much. You're going to have to sift through some results. But then you also want to get, I think I mentioned your book title, your blog URL, because some people will just mention your blog without mentioning your website, and it shows up differently in Google, so you want to make sure and get that. What this will help you do is if you start to follow 5 to 10 authors in your market, you're going to start to see where they're showing up and where they are spending their time. So you'll figure out the blogs that they're going after, or that they're appearing on, and those could potentially be important to you as well, and we'll talk a bit about that later on in the session. But the ultimate goal is to be number one on Google, and that is what I think everybody wants. So we all want to be on page one, and ideally we want to be search number one. When somebody is searching on your particular keyword. That's not always an easy thing to do, but it's definitely possible. Now, if you have a keyword that is, let's say, entrepreneur or diet or dating, that's going to be really, really, really tough. So I would highly recommend that you look up. I have a keyword article, by the way, and Rich, I hope that it's okay if I give out my email address, because I want to make sure that, if folks have questions about any of the content on this call, you're welcome to email me, and I'll give you that email address, which is Penny, Penny, at amarketingexpert.com, and you can email me. I also have a keyword article, and Rich, I can either send it to you, and you're welcome to upload it onto the site, or folks can email it to me. We can kind of figure that out in email afterwards, but it goes into much more detail than we'll have time for on this call about keywords and how to really figure out which keywords that you want to rank for. It's not that difficult. I mean, if you want to spend hours and hours of your life focused on keywords, you can certainly do that, and I think that in some cases it may be necessary, but for basic keyword searches, it's pretty simple to do, and like I said, the article will help you. And the reason that you want to know what your keywords are is because you will use them everywhere. You will use them in a press release that you write and perhaps syndicate online. You will use it in your in your blog articles that you write, blog topics, in your website homepage copy and things like that. So it's just really good to know what you want to rank for, because that will help you get onto page one of Google. Now, let's talk a little bit about the secrets of ranking before we move on to some of our social networking discussion. So, and it's important before we get into that discussion for a couple of reasons, because there are a lot of secrets to Google, but there are some pretty basic things as well. And the way that Google ranks a website is two ways. They rank it using off-page factors and on-page factors. And when you have a website that is considered an authority site, that means that you have a website that has very strong content, which we'll talk about in a minute, very strong off-page factors, and very strong on-page factors. And using two terms, relevance and authority are two ways that Google picks up your site. So relevance is very easy, obviously relevance to the search, and authority to the topic. So authority is not necessarily how important you are or how pretty your site is, but all those three things that are listed up on this slide. So content, off-page factors, on-page factors equal authority. And it's important to know this, because without this authority piece, you cannot just put up a website and not do anything with it. Without this authority piece, you will never have a site that is going to rank. Okay. I highly recommend, by the way, at this juncture of the conversation, we are going to talk about websites a little bit later, as I mentioned. There's nothing wrong with getting a free website. So there's nothing wrong with going to Weebly or going to any of those free sites that will give you something as a placeholder. But remember, that is exactly what it is. It is a placeholder. So you will never have any kind of ranking with a free site. And the reason for that is because most free sites are housed within a bigger site itself. So like, for example, if you get a site from Weebly.com, you have a website, but it's still part of Weebly. So you will not gain ranking until you separate out from them. So that's just something important to know. There's nothing wrong with having a free site, but your hands are a little bit tied as to what you can do for search ranking. So if you're starting to get really serious about your promotion and you really want to put some muscle behind it, get a free site. It doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. I know people who do them for $500, which when you consider that you have the site for the lifetime for your career, $500 on a per day average is not a lot to spend. So just give that a little bit of thought. So the next piece of this is taking action. So what actions can you take to help you gain more exposure? So really what I'm talking about is an extremely highly productive and a very high conversion campaign. And the reason, people a lot of times will ask me, when do you sleep? Because it seems like, or it's perceived in the industry that, I'm always sort of doing something all the time. And that's actually true and it's not true. I mean, I really love what I do, so unfortunately, the good news is I love what I do. The bad news is that I love what I do, so it never feels like working, and it's always it's like being able to do my hobby all the time. So I do tend to spend a lot of time with it, but there's also multiples. So considering that, some of my content is recycled, some of it is excerpted and put onto Twitter. So I make use of the actions that I take. Like if I take one action, a lot of times I'm able to use it in 3 or 5 different ways, right? So I make sure that one action isn't just one action, so that blog posts can be repurposed. And it's an important thing to remember because, none of us wants to spend our lives, even if we love what we do, we also want to be able to, take the dog to the park and not feel guilty that we're not sitting in front of our computers working away. So understanding the concept of recycling and knowing that it is absolutely, as much as we're encouraged to recycle in, bottles and cans and paper and all that, I encourage you to recycle online, obviously within reason. You don't want to take one article and reuse it 20 times. But you can definitely repurpose content, 2, 3, and 4 times, and sometimes, I've had articles that have appeared in one article that's appeared in 7 different places. So if the piece is good, people are going to ask for it, and that's a high-quality problem to have. Couple of rules of the game before we start with Facebook. Start early. It's earlier than you think. We've had authors who will show up, tons of platform, big businesses, maybe they were already a bestseller on another book, huge mailing lists, and these folks are still starting 6 to 8 months out prior to their book launch. So start early. Test. Make sure that the day that your book is launched, that your site is also not going up that day because that's too late. First off, it's too late for the first bullet, which is start early, and it's just too late in general because you don't want to be testing whether or not your email campaign or your autoresponder or whatever is working on the day that your book launches. Stay on message and test your message and be consistent. I want to use all 3 of those in the same sentence because it's very important testing your message, let's start with that one. That goes back to, remember the Google Alerts that I talked about? You're going to get a really good sense of what's resonating out there the earlier that you start with that, because you're going to be able to see what other people are doing. And you may not like the other messages that are being used. That's fine. You're not out there to critique their work. You're just out there to learn. But you do want to be able to study the market enough so that you know what you want to put out there and then start testing that message. And then if the message seems to have stickiness to it, if it seems to be working, it may even be a little bit slow. You may not know the first week that you put it out there whether the message is working. But if it feels like it's good, and if you're not sure, get a professional opinion. But ask somebody who doesn't know you, right? And the reason I say that is because, our friends and family and even people in our writers groups, they don't want to hurt our feelings. So it's a little hard, and it's harder to be honest with somebody when you're sitting across the table from them, because we all work so hard on our message, we don't, a lot of times people just don't want to hurt our feelings. And even though we say, just hurt my feelings, go ahead if you don't like it, they still are a little reluctant to do so. So, test this on people who have no, who have no sort of position in your life, the guy at the grocery store, whatever, or hire a professional marketing person and see whether or not this is working. Then once you've done that, stay on message, because a lot of times what happens is people will change their messages. And you know what? Here's the thing. If you have a topic that changes to the seasons, I understand that your message is going to change. Ooh, now it's back to school. Oh, now it's time for winter, or whatever. But the core of your offering is not going to change, and that's actually what I'm talking about. So remember that, you have a particular message that you're putting out to your audience, and what you don't want to do is you don't want to change the channel on them. So, imagine your audience is sitting in front of the TV and they're watching, I don't know what, the evening news, right? And then the channel changes and all of a sudden it's a rerun of Friends, or the channel changes and it's a documentary on Coney or whatever that is. So by changing your message, it's just like changing the channel on a TV, and you confuse people, and that's how you lose them. So being consistent follows in that same vein, except that it also means be consistent in the material that you put out there. Be consistent in your blogging. Be consistent in your messaging. You really want to, if you're going to get on sites like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest, not so much with YouTube, but you do need to have some sort of daily activity, even if it's just one single action, okay? So social networking, let's talk about, first off, Facebook by the numbers. A lot of people, it's really interesting. Facebook evokes very strong emotion in people. It's kind of interesting because we find that when I talk to people, some people hate Facebook, some people love it. People are very confused about the Facebook and privacy, not piracy, privacy. And there are very easy ways to set your privacy settings, okay? So you can go into Facebook and set your privacy settings. You can also just be careful what you post on Facebook. And we'll talk in a minute about the difference between a profile and a fan page, which also gets confusing because, let's face it, a lot of us started with a personal profile that has a lot of information on there. And, some people do use Facebook as a diary, which I don't recommend because that's where you get into the whole privacy issues. Facebook captures 1 in every 11 internet visits in the U.S. I mean, that's really extraordinary. If my website did that, I don't know that I would have time to do this call. I mean, it's amazing, the growth. The largest demographic also happens to be the biggest buying demographic, which is one of the reasons why we all love Facebook, although I'm going to talk about monetization of Facebook in just a minute, which may surprise you. The third bullet, extraordinary, 20 minutes on Facebook. Generally speaking, if you get somebody to spend 5 minutes on your website, that's a pretty long time. People don't, when we surf, we don't really spend a ton of time on sites necessarily. So Facebook is really kicking it with the numbers. Now, this is an example of a personal profile. Those of you who are my friends, and please, if you're not, do reach out to me because I love adding new authors and published or otherwise to to this group. But this is my personal profile. Now, you'll notice that I have my professional picture up there, so it's not me, holding my dog or whatever. And part of the reason for that is because people know me, and to some degree, Author Marketing Experts is branded, but, I'm sort of the brand of the company because I'm out there speaking and people know me. So I don't use my personal profile as a personal place for me to talk about stuff going on in my life. I mean, I think the most personal thing that I will put on there is on Sunday I flew from New York to San Diego, and I was flying over New York, and it was just the most extraordinary picture that I took with my phone, which, yes, I know I'm not supposed to have my phone turned on while we're in flight, but anyway. So, I posted this little message, but I try to stay, I'll post things that I think are funny or whatever just because I don't want to be just all business all the time. But I do try to stay away from, super personal stuff because I just don't think that, I don't think that people really want to hear it. And I think that they're there to get information, and rightfully so. But I do use my Facebook personal profile. I would encourage you, however, to be very careful when you use this. Facebook Terms of Service state that you are not allowed to use a personal profile as a sales tool. So you want to make sure that you are, just sharing information. And that's another thing also that I want to mention. In anything that you do in Internet marketing, it's all about sharing information. It's not about it's not about give me your money and buy my book. Although we all want that to happen, you have to be a little bit careful with that because that can be, kind of a turnoff. Now, this is our company Facebook fan page. This has no personal information on it whatsoever. As you can see, same picture. And the banner at the top, which is brand new, Facebook just started that. And you can see that, there's this, all of it is just information. I highly encourage you to get a fan page. I think fan pages are extraordinary. Facebook is doing a lot of stuff to help support fan pages, and so it's a really, really good thing to have. I know it's a lot if you have a personal profile and a fan page, but I will tell you this is where duplication of information comes in because a lot of people, you can see on my personal, you tap out on personal profiles at 5,000 as well, but now people can subscribe to your updates so you can get that number up considerably. But you have no limit on Facebook. So on Facebook we have 60,000 likes, and on my personal page I have like 2,300 friends or something. There is some crossover between those two numbers. So some people that are on the AME have liked the AME page are also my friends, so there's some duplication of information for them. But for the most part, we do cross-post. So stuff that gets posted to our fan page gets posted to my personal profile, and vice versa. So that's an area where you can duplicate. Oops, sorry about that. That's an area where you can duplicate information. Here are some Facebook tips for getting better engagement. Photos get 50% more engagement. Quotes get a pretty high engagement, and ask questions. So I highly encourage you to get on there and ask a question about anything, and I try to do that. I try to do that once a week. Although I have somebody that works for me who helps to manage the Author Marketing Experts fan page because it would be hard to do a lot of what we do without that help there. Some other tips: posting between 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. Now these are Eastern times. Okay, so posting, and I'm going to just mute myself because I felt a sneeze coming on. I hate that. I thought, I'm going to have to go offline for just a second. But posting between 8 p.m. and 7 a.m., and I think just because people are on the sites after work, before work, best day if you're only posting once a week, but please, if you can, post daily, at least once a day. Some people think you have to post a lot on Facebook. The numbers do not bear out. Posting 1 to 2 times a day gets actually higher engagement. And keep your posts to a minimum. So don't make long journal entries on your Facebook fan page. Shorter is best, and generally what we do is we will post an update, and then we'll post a little sentence, and then we'll post an update. We'll link to another page with information. Now, these are the new Facebook fan pages. This is behind the scenes kind of a thing. When you click on the admin button, it pulls up all of this data. and I'm going to talk a little bit about what this data is in just a second. But I want you to take a look at the notifications. So the notifications are where people have posted things on your page. So they've made comments, they've posted links, whatever. New likes, you'll see new likes in that box just below it. One of the things that I do occasionally is I will reach out to new likes. I don't do this all the time. Obviously, with 60,000 likes on a page, it would be hard to thank everybody who came to your little party. But I try to reach out to a couple people, just check out their page or thank them for liking us, because it's always great to have new fans. So I try to do that, maybe once a week or so, new messages. But this whole admin panel now is where you see, all of your updated information. So it's good to go in there and check that at least a few times a week, because as people are posting on your page, you want to be sure that you are, you want to be sure that you're commenting or answering a question if they have one. So just to help to understand engagement, and I want to go back here. This insights is what we are talking about right now. So the insights is the engagement on your page, and it's really, there's some great numbers in there. Your reach is obviously, how many people read your post, engaged users, how many people liked your post, talked about this, and virality are how many people reposted what you posted on Facebook. So that's kind of important to know, because again, the numbers never lie. So you want to be sure and, you want to be sure and get the, you want to be sure and post things that are getting high user engagement. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on those numbers and just kind of watch those over a few months and see what people are responding to. If we were in a real room as opposed to the virtual experience, I would be asking you by a show of hands, how many of you are on Twitter? I love asking this question. And then, everybody puts their hand up, or whoever puts their hand up, and then they put their hand down, and I say, okay, of those of you who are on Twitter, how many of you actually feel like it's productive for you? And almost invariably, maybe one of the hands goes up or none, because most people get really confused with Twitter. Now, we can all talk about why, the numbers behind Twitter, and I will just in a second talk a little bit about new accounts and tweets per day. But Twitter is really, it has become part of our society. I mean, look even at the Academy Awards in March, Angie's right leg had her own hashtag when Angelina Jolie sort of put her leg out there in that ridiculous pose that she has. So almost every event that I've been to, every company, everything has a hashtag now, right? So, and a hashtag, for those of you who don't know, is a way of, back when Twitter was first started, there was no real way for anybody to search a particular keyword on Twitter. So somebody created hashtags. So now when you create a hashtag, you can actually search that. So let's say, for example, I had a hashtag for red hot internet publicity, which was hashtag # essentially red hot, okay? And you could search that, and you'd see what, or it was red hot book, because we haven't used it in a while because the book's been out for a little bit. But, so you could see what conversations were coming up under Red Hot Book, and that's what hashtags are for. So when people talk about that, sometimes I know it gets a little bit confusing. And it was one of those things that it was kind of like the way that Twitter was developed. Twitter was developed just as a, internal company communication tool, and next thing you know, Twitter is, hopefully they're going to be monetizing it better soon. But Twitter has just turned into this billion-dollar company, and nobody really thought, the first time that I think we looked at Twitter, everybody sort of thought, wow, well, this makes no sense. And I think you can probably all relate to that. But now, where we are is that there are 11 new Twitter accounts added every second. So think about how long we've now been on this call. I'm showing the time clock is like 34 minutes. Think about all of the new accounts that have been added in that time. 1 million accounts are added every day, if that's maybe easier math. And 33 billion tweets are sent per day. When Whitney Houston died, there were several different hashtags, and you could follow the tweets that happened. I think that she actually broke the record for number of tweets per minute, which was previously held by, it was either, I think it was the earthquake or something. There's so much stuff that goes on Twitter on any given day, but she definitely broke the record for more tweets per minute and obviously also per second. But the best practices to start off with Twitter is to listen, learn, participate, and then contribute. And that's one of the reasons why I say I want you to follow people in your market. So listen to what they're saying, learn from what they're saying, then participate and contribute. And contributing is really important. Again, you don't want to lead your internet activities with your wallet open saying, please buy my book. It's just like going into a networking event, right? You would never go into a networking event and walk up to a group of people and say, hey there, my name is such and such, please buy my book. You would go in and you would listen to what they were talking about, you would contribute to the conversation, you would participate in the conversation, and then, as appropriate, you might bring up that you're an author or you have a business or you're a speaker or whatever it is that you're there to network about. So best practices on Twitter. Communicate, not broadcast. We use it. We share our blog posts. We share other news. We try to be insightful, like we tweeted about this webinar today on Twitter to kind of help spread the word. We posted to Facebook and things like that. So we share information. And really, again, it's just about, think of everything that you're doing online as going to a big networking party and going out there and just really talking and engaging and offering people helpful information. Now, here are some sites that you may just want to jot down, and I'm sure that you'll also get access to these slides. But if you want to figure out who to follow on Twitter, there's a lot of different places that you can look at, and it will give you, well, also if you plug in your area of expertise, it will also give you suggestions, which is really, really helpful. The other thing that I recommend that you do on Twitter is network. Networking is really, really important. And one of the things that I will do is I have lists, and these lists are not public, they're just for me personally, and I call them my social media rock stars, and so I follow Jeff Bullis and Mari Smith, who I know, and Guy Kawasaki and Dave Meerman Scott, and just some really, really, really great voices out there on social media. And whenever they post something that I find interesting or that I think is helpful to the folks who follow me, is I will repost it or I will thank them for that information. And that's just really, really great networking. So the next is Pinterest, which is my new addiction. And I know that you guys recently had a Pinterest session, so we won't get into too much information about this, but I wrote an article for Huffington Post, which I got really, really great feedback on because a lot of people are really intrigued by this site. Pinterest essentially is a virtual bulletin board. So you can have different boards up here, and you see what this thing that looks like an egg, which is actually a candle, and then the toast over here. And so it's really, if you go to Pinterest.com, you'll see that it's kind of a mishmash of a lot of different things. Okay, your Pinterest page can be anything that you want it to be related to your topic. So let's say that you've written a book on, let's go back to our infertility example. Let's say you've written a book on infertility. You might have a board about famous people who have struggled with this, who have come out with their, struggles, so that women who are struggling with this might feel inspired. And they won't feel so alone because there's a whole isolation thing to infertility. Recent studies that have been done potentially, other helpful books or information that are out there on this topic, and your Pinterest board now becomes sort of a little stopping point, and your area of expertise is divided up among these different categories that can really help your audience. In so doing, you will also and obviously promote your brand, your message, and your book. Now, just to give you an idea about Pinterest and some of the staggering numbers that have come from that site, 13 million users in only 10 months. It is by far the biggest and the baddest being good, bad, social networking site out there. Okay, the average age, again, perfect buying, and most of the folks on here are women. Obviously, from the very visual element tends to draw women. Most men that I've talked to, it's really funny, and even some of the biggest social networkers out there, they go, "Gosh, I just don't get Pinterest." That's okay. They don't need to get it because it is such a phenomenal place, and I'm hoping that the big, huge marketers will kind of stay off of it for a while so that the authors and the smaller companies and the startups and things like that can get on there and have just, a lot of fun. We all sort of remember Twitter before the big marketers got on there, and then, the noise becomes much greater. Time Magazine voted Pinterest as the top 50 websites for 2011. I'm sure it'll win that for 2012 as well. And in January, Pinterest drew more traffic than Twitter, and that's actually Google Plus, not Google, obviously. More traffic than Twitter and Google Plus combined in January 2012, so pretty staggering. So let's talk a little bit about how to come up with your boards. Picking great names for boards, and the reason that you want to do that is because every time someone repins something so if you have a great picture on there and someone wants to share it on their Pinterest page, your board name will go with it. All right, so you want to have great board names. You can have a product board, as I mentioned, tutorials and videos. You can also pin videos. You can do a seasonal board. I think that's fine. Even like if you go to my Pinterest page, which is Book Gal Penny, you'll see that I have some personal stuff up there. I have stuff about Cosmo, my most perfect and wonderful dog. I have things about, stuff that I love, and so it's not all about business. I think I wanted to kind of mix it up for Pinterest a little bit and show that, look, I'm not just this marketing head out there kind of marketing books. And you can also do event boards. So if you do a book signing and you have pictures, by all means, put an event board up there. I think that's fun. Keywords and hashtags, just like on Twitter, very, very important on Pinterest. And click on the popular to find out what's trending. Let's just go back so you can see what that looks like. Whoopsie. Sorry about that. I went back the wrong way. So if you look at the top here, you see it says pinners you follow, everything, videos, popular gifts. Click on that popular, and that will show you what's trending right now on Pinterest, which is kind of fun. So you can sort of see what's hot and what's going on. You can promote your pins on Twitter and Facebook. Every time you pin something, it will ask you, do you want to promote this on Twitter and Facebook? And you always answer yes, unless it's something very personal and you want to kind of keep that off of, if you don't want to send it to your Facebook fan page, that's certainly fine. When I post pictures of Cosmo, obviously I'm not sharing those. Comment and repin, again, really, really important to be out there and to be, to be communicating with folks on these sites. They call them social networking sites for a reason. Using visuals on your blog. What I mean by that is every time that you blog, use a picture. Use something so that when you pin that, because what you can do is you can pin blog posts onto your Pinterest page, and it's really easy to do. I wrote an article, as I mentioned. It's up on Huffington Post, on my page on Huffington Post, on Pinterest. If you want a link to it, I can either send it to Gwen and Rich, or you can email me at penny@amarketingexpert.com, and I'll send it to you. But it explains the whole blog piece of it, which if John didn't get into that a few weeks ago, and if you want more information or this sort of step-by-step process, it's really easy to do. But essentially keep in mind that because Pinterest is getting so much traffic, that incoming link back to your site is going to be really, really important for you to have, because you want that will really, really help with your traffic. So the more that you can pin your blog posts, the better served that you will be. Okay. So again, just to kind of highlight before we move on to the website stuff, networking online, retweeting, commenting on other people's news, really getting out there and networking. I also recommend reviewing other experts' books in your industry. Remember, it's not just a one-sided or a one-way street. It's a two-way street. And if you can review other people's books, they might decide to review your book when you launch. Offer to interview other experts. That's another thing that I recommend that you do and that we do. as well as we interview folks in our industry, and we put it up on our YouTube page. So finally, and the last piece of this webinar is creating an exceptional website. Okay, so just a couple of quick things. Your website should serve, your homepage should serve a single purpose. Now, your website may do a lot of things. So if you go to the amarketingexpert.com website, you'll see that I do speaking, we have product, obviously we have services, we have coaching, we have information. So the website itself can have multiple purposes and multiple goals, but your homepage should really have one single purpose, because if you confuse people on the homepage, if you offer them too many choices, they aren't going to pick any, and they're just going to leave. Website rules of the road, you don't want to oversell, right? So goes hand in hand with that. You want to avoid the hype. Giving and receiving, people generally want to explore your site. They want to get more information, or they want more data, or whatever. People always say to us, Penny, you give away so much information in your company, and how do you do it, and how do you make money? And we've never had an issue with that. And I think because to some degree, we're considered a resource, and I'm really, really proud that we are considered a resource, because, it's important to me for authors to have a place to go where they feel like they can get information. And we may not be the right company for everybody to go to, and that's okay. But I always want to remain a resource. And so whatever your primary objective is, or whatever your mission statement is, your website should really fall in line with that. I recommend getting a .com domain name. I know a lot of people like .net, and in some cases .org if you obviously have a nonprofit. But .com, try to get some version of a .com. And don't get hyphens. So, like, for example, if I couldn't get author marketing experts, I wasn't going to get author-marketing-experts, because I think people forget the hyphens. It also makes the website domain name really long. As I mentioned, define the primary goal for your homepage. You want the navigation to be really easy. I highly encourage you, to the degree that you feel comfortable doing so, make sure to capture emails and give them an easy way to buy your book. Every time that you make somebody make another click to get somewhere on your site, you can lose, to buy your book, as an example, you lose 5% of your audience. It's a really important number to know. So if you're sending them from the home page and they're going to the About the Book page, and then the About the Author page, and then they're going to the Buy the Book page, just because that's the road that you've sort of led for them, you've put too many steps in that staircase. So you want to shorten the staircase, give them a fast and easy checkout. They should be able to go from your home page right to your checkout. And if you don't want to sell your book on your page, that's fine. You can send them to Amazon or wherever you choose to. People do tend to default to Amazon, though. So this is an example of our website. And we have, you see that there's the video up there, which if you click on that, it just basically tells you, it's just a very short video that encourages people to sign up for the newsletter, which is right here. By the way, this right-hand side of your website is the power side. That's where the eye goes to first, because we read from left to right. So whatever your whatever your number one goal is for that website should be on the right-hand side. Which ours is obviously to get people signed up for our newsletter, because that helps us to stay in front of our audience, okay? Don't put too much copy on your homepage. Your website isn't a magazine. People are not going to read. They're just going to browse. Checking your website to make sure that it shows up in any browser, which is anybrowser.com. That's kind of important, because a lot of, well, not a lot of designers, but some designers don't always program or code a site for every single browser. And we have a lot of them now. We have Chrome, we have RockMelt, we have, of course, Internet Explorer and Mozilla, and there are more coming all the time. Page-to-page consistency, also important. A lot of us have blogs that don't look like our website, and you will lose people when you do that. Okay, so make sure that your blog looks just like your website. I mentioned this earlier, driving sales. Making a purchase really, or whatever it is that you want them to do, make it easy, okay? Make sure that you, that you give them an easy way to buy your book. Offer a link to Amazon. I always recommend that. I think Amazon, again, as I mentioned earlier, tends to be the default place for people to buy books. Don't give them too many choices. Using PayPal is totally fine for your shopping cart. We actually use that. We had a very expensive OS commerce system, but we found that people actually prefer PayPal. So just a little something to consider. Words on your website have lots of white space. I think that's pretty important because, again, people scan headlines, highlighting keywords, having bullets, and you can take a look at our website and even use that as an example because our designer is one of the top SEO people in the country. She's absolutely fabulous, and our website gets huge conversion because of that. And you would think that we paid tens of thousands of dollars for it, and we didn't. So it was well worth every dime that we invested in it. Maybe's rule: people generally do not make a decision to buy your book the minute that they land on your website. So that's one of the reasons why the newsletter is really important. And the ethical bribe goes along with that because we give them access to 52 ways to sell more books if they give us their email address. So that's our ethical bribe, and you might want to create one on your own. So let's talk just for a second really quick, and then I'll let you guys, we can open it up for questions, or if we're at the end of the webinar, obviously, we can let you all go, and you're always welcome to email me questions because I cover a lot of information in these webinars, and I want to make sure that your questions are answered. So you can always email me at penny@amarketingexpert.com. Basic SEO, on-page factors and off-page factors. So on-page factors, what happens on your website. Off-page factors are the incoming links, which is why the social networks are super important. Okay. So 4 steps to great SEO. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second, picking unique page titles, because I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute so you can actually have a visual. Using your keywords, that goes back to the keyword article that I talked about, right? Getting great URLs. This is important because you can also use your keywords in your URL and get great ranking. Let me tell you a little secret that I did. I got, obviously we want to rank for the term book marketing, right? So I got, my SEO gal actually told me about this, so she gets full credit for that. But I got the domain name Book Marketing AME. Now, we never use that domain name. We just have it pointing to our website. And we went from page 2, doing that, we went from page 2 to page 1 of Google in 3 months. We also use Book Marketing AME for our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So we do keep that branding pretty consistent, but using those keywords in your domain name can be really, really helpful. And like I said, it doesn't have to be your primary domain name. It just has to point to your primary. Blogging is great. Blogging is something Google loves blogging. No website should be static. And syndicating articles, getting content out there, good, solid, helpful content, and the more that you can utilize your keywords in that content, the better. Now I'm going to talk just for a second about what page titles are, and if you take a look at this, you see the blue bar where I'm pointing to, online marketing and publicity. That's your page title. Okay, so we use Book Marketing AME in our URL, and then we have the words book marketing on our on our page, and then in the page title we use that, and a lot of people forget that. So it's good to use. It will really, really help you with ranking. And finally, I leave you with this. Everything is your resume. Everything is searchable. People can find, you can find pretty much anything on anybody, anywhere. So be careful what you put out there. Make sure that everything is edited. This isn't about posting your diary on Facebook, although, I do discourage that. But it is about making sure that everything is in line with what your mission statement is, that everything that you don't put a single tweet out there without making sure that, it's spell checked and your blog the same way. And, generally speaking, most programs have the little red line that goes under something if you've misspelled something. So I think it's important that you just check that. Don't be too quick or too hasty to post something. Make sure that you are putting information out there that's solid, and also check your facts, because anything that's posted anywhere can be picked up by anybody and put in anything. And I've actually had several blog posts that have showed up, or not entire blog posts, but excerpts of them showed up in news articles. So just be careful. Remember that you don't want anything out there that you wouldn't want your grandmother to read. So with that, I know we only have a few minutes, but Rich, are there any questions out there, or have I just sort of stunned everybody into silence?
Well, first I want to give you a very quick little thank you, because you've done so much for us today. I've got 5 pages of notes, and I know that others do as well. And if anybody has questions, you can type those into the little question box on the side, and if you don't know where that is, there's a little red arrow over on the right side, and you click that to open up the bar, and then there's a question panel there where you can submit a question. So questions can come in. I've got a couple of things that I want to pass along that I've got, and some that have come in already. One of them was about where your audience finds you, and I thought it was particularly interesting where you talked about identifying the top 5 to 10 authors in your market, and how that gives you a place to start. So you then track those with Google Alerts, follow them, see what they're doing, and that gives you clues as to what you should do. That just seems like a tremendous idea. So I had to comment on that. That goes back to something you said right at the beginning, and I think is really powerful.
Well, thank you, and I think that it's I think that it really is. It is so important, because you want to be able to, and Rich, it's not just about tracking the other people in your industry. It's also about networking with them, because I think there's an old saying that, all you can do is ask, and sometimes really that's all that you need to do. And I've had people, I'm getting ready to interview Guy Kawasaki, who is huge, right? I mean, I showed up at Blog World in Los Angeles, and I was sitting in a session with Guy Kawasaki and Chris Brogan, and 2 of the biggest internet guys out there, and I thought, either I'm just overly excited or I really need a life, but they were like my rock stars, right? And so, for everybody in your industry, you have these people, and maybe, nobody on this call knows who Guy Kawasaki and Chris Brogan, and that's fine, because I'm a geek and I know who they are, right? But, there are people in your industry that you really admire and that you want to get to know, and I think that it is a great thing when you can start networking with them. And the Internet, somebody asked me on Saturday, I was doing a webinar at a writers' conference, and somebody asked me on Saturday, what has changed in the last, 5 years, let's say? And I said, you know what, it has become more easier, quicker, and more accessible for authors to do virtually anything that they want and get access to anybody that they want. And it just become, there's so much more transparency. And that's actually really exciting, because I've seen authors and businesses and speakers just grow their careers tremendously because they've been networking. And so think about that. And one of the things I want to leave you all with too is make your own rock star list. And don't just, I mentioned that I retweet their information and share their information and whatnot, and that's all great, but don't just do that. Make it a point to get somewhere where you can meet them, because these are people, you know what, everybody started out where you're starting out. And I think that we all remember what it was like to get that first book out there and to kind of sort of show up at your first event and hope that somebody shows up for your book signing and all that. And your community, I would imagine, just like the writing community, is going to be very supportive of what you do. So get out there and try to meet your idol, like I did, sitting in that session with Chris Brogan and Guy Kawasaki and thinking, whoa, I'm at a rock concert, people, because it's a great thing. And I interviewed Chris Brogan recently, and he was fantastic. And like I said, I'm going to be interviewing Guy Kawasaki. So it's it's fun, and you never know, you may get an endorsement from somebody that you never expected.
Great. And what you suggested about starting is to do that following so we can see what they're doing, and that opens the door to all the rest.
Yeah.
So that's super. Okay, we have another question this one's about Pinterest. You said something about using visuals on your blog, which you then can pin on your boards. Where should you get pictures to put on your blog or on your website like that?
That's a really great question. So the question, just to sort of repeat again, was with Pinterest, where do you get these pictures? Because that's kind of an issue right now with people going, well, people are just out there stealing pictures and whatnot. One of the things, if you have your own pictures, then you can use those. If you have artwork that you are allowed to use from somebody, always make sure and give credit, because credit is the big thing, is the big issue. But you can look up free stock photo sites, and you can grab pictures there because they are free, and they ask you for photo credit, which sometimes will show up with the picture, and other times you can just list that in your blog, so you can do that. The other thing that you can do too is, if you're pinning somebody else's blog, you can utilize their picture that they've already gotten the okay on. So I hope that answers the question about. Because that's a very, very good question, by the way, because it has come up. And check the Pinterest terms of service, because they changed that recently also to make sure that people are getting credit for the work that they do.
Yeah, it strikes me as a good idea to carry a digital camera with you everywhere you go too, because you can take photographs that tell your story.
Yes, carrying a
use
digital
your own
camera.
stuff on your blog or on your website is going to obviously be something that you have permission to do because you made the image.
Carrying a digital camera, phenomenal idea. It's a great idea. Also a little video camera, and most phones just do both now. So really, all you have to do is take your phone with you.
Right. Okay, let's see. We have a question here. What do you think is the best way to build followers on Twitter? I'm wondering if you have noticed less followership for a company versus a person.
Yeah. Well, I would, in order to, so the question was, how do you build good followers on Twitter? And the first piece is that you want to follow people in your market. So follow people in your market, and then start to look for, retweeting their news. So you can do all of that stuff, which helps to build followers. Having good content, that's always a great way to do it. And with your content, use hashtags. So, for example, whenever we post something on ebooks, we'll use the hashtag ebook. Whenever we post something that's like maybe a freebie for authors or something, we'll use the hashtag free. So hashtags are a great way. So retweeting content, networking on Twitter, you can, that way. Using hashtags is a great way to build following. Following other people is a great way to build following, and just putting out good and solid content. But that's a great question.
Okay, we have two questions here that I'm going to ask together because I think these fit together. At the beginning of the program, you talked about time constraints, and while it's important to do this, not spending too much time doing it. Then you told us all of these things you need to do. So one of the questions was, what's a good plan to get started so we can do this without taking too much time? And the other question is, do you have a plan that will fix me if I'm already spending way too much time on social media?
Yes.
And I suspect the answer is the same to both of these.
Well, so the question, right. So the question, just to reiterate, was about the time. I'm sort of like, I have this whole oxymoron thing going on, right? So I said, well, don't spend too much time, but look at all the great stuff you have to do. And people leave these sessions and their heads are spinning and they're thinking, oh my God. Okay, so let me just break this down for you. First and foremost, if you're identifying exactly what you need to be doing, there's a couple things that are going to help to whittle down your time. So for the person who said, I'm already spending way too much time, how can I stop spending so much time? You may be spending way too much time doing things that aren't really going to affect you. So I recommend that you look at your numbers. see how many people are retweeting your stuff, how many people are liking your posts, take a look at your traffic, right? Your Google Analytics, your traffic on your website. Where is that traffic coming from? You can now measure social media, so you can see which social media portal is sending you the most traffic. That's really, really important. Too much detail on Google Analytics to go in on this call. We can certainly do another session about that at another time, but that's a really good way to do it. The other piece is again, following people in your industry will really show you how to maximize the effectiveness of your message, because you'll get to see what are they doing, how are they, and it will really, really help to get those creative juices flowing. Okay. The next thing is I really highly encourage you, if you can, spend a Saturday and write a few blog posts, write a bunch of content, but keep it short. And it's interesting because I used to put blog posts together of 1,200 words, and I still do that to some extent, but I've also had blog posts that are 500 and 700 words. So longer is not necessarily always better, right? And then put those blog posts, you can, if you're using WordPress or Blogger, you can time when those blog posts are going to hit. So you can have, a couple of posts a week. Those then get retweeted on Twitter. You can link your Twitter account to your blog, so it gets posted on Twitter. Then you can link your Facebook to your blog, so it gets posted on Facebook. So that's saving you a little bit of time right there, right? And then one of the other thing that I recommend is obviously if you've got Google Alerts, you'll get an alert on what's going on your topic. And you can just retweet that if you want. And then maybe there are some other bloggers and things like that you follow. Here's what I do in the morning. So I look at the bloggers that I follow. I have them all on my Google I page, and I look at what they've posted that morning. And sometimes I'll retweet that. And then really quickly, I just look at the blog post titles and see which ones I want to read. I go through my Google Alerts. Bam, I pick out what I want to do. I post that on Twitter. Sometimes I'll go on to Hootsuite and I'll schedule a couple of those posts so I don't have to worry about it throughout the day. I'll go on to Pinterest, maybe do one or two little posts, or maybe I'll take my blog post and repost it onto Pinterest, so that's done. And honestly, I spend 15 or 20 minutes a day doing social media. But I figured out what my audience wants. They want more than anything. They want help, and they want to know how to sell books, which is why I renamed this presentation How to Sell Books, not always to throw people off, but because it really speaks to people. Authors want to know how to sell books at the end of the day. It even eclipses fame or an invitation to the Academy Awards. People really want to sell books. So I know what the audience wants. I didn't know when I started doing this 12 years ago. I had no idea. I thought, everybody just wants to get published, but that's, there's a bigger message behind that. So figure out what your audience wants. What are their hot buttons? And the only way you're going to do that is by spending a little bit of time in researching. So to the guy out there who's saying that he's spending way too much time doing this stuff, you're going to have to spend a little bit more time, but I promise it will pay off. If you're spending hours and hours on your social media a day and you're not an internet person, so you're not a Guy Kawasaki or a Chris Brogan or a Maury Smith or an Amy Porterfield, you're doing way too much in social media.
So you need to define what you really need to do and just do that.
You need to define, and also, you know what, seriously, keep a little time clock by your computer, and at 15 minutes, bam, you're done. And just really limit yourself, because I'll tell you something. What happens is, we're all so ADD, so you start on Facebook, and then you're on Twitter, and then you see a news article, and yada, yada. And keeping that time clock by your computer, or even just using an online stopwatch countdown, will really, really help you, because if you're spending too much time in social media and you're not getting a huge payoff, it's very discouraging, and people start to, that's when you get all these abandoned Facebook pages, and why 11 new Twitter accounts are started every second, and 80 to 90% of those are abandoned. So you want to keep it going, but you also want to realize that you have other things to do, like, I don't know, earn a living. Like, you have a family and you have to eat, so you can't have every meal at your desk, right?
And ultimately, we do want to sell more books.
We do.
Yeah.
That's what we all want to change the world. But I'll tell you something. Most of us aren't going to be able to change the world unless we sell more books, because the book is the key to doing whatever it is that you want to do. And this isn't just about getting out of debt or going to Maui and all those things are great. But at the end of the day, most authors are very altruistic, and they want to change the world. They want to make the world a better place, and you're not going to do that unless you're selling more books. So that's really the key.
That's great. Well, Penny Sansevere, I want to thank you very much for being our guest today. Gwen, is your microphone working?
My microphone is working, Penny. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, you're both very welcome, and thank you for inviting me to be on this webinar. I had a really great time. I hope the information was helpful to your audience, and like I said, just let me know about the articles if you want them or you want me to send them. Either is fine with me, but I am so appreciative of this opportunity. Thank you.
Great. We're eager to post that information. Yeah. Penny Sansevere is CEO and founder of Author Marketing Experts, Inc., AME, and you can find out more about her at amarketingexpert.com. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.